People whose marriages lasted less than a year, months, weeks, days, or even hours. When did you realize you'd made a mistake, and why? On our honeymoon she didn't want to do anything but fight, so I left 2 days early to be with my dog lol. Then she stopped wearing her ring and refused to tell people she was married, referring to me as her boyfriend instead. The final straw was when my grandpa was dying and she said I wish he'd just hurry up and die already. I'm tired of this apartment being so depressing all the time. Made it 4 months in all before filing for divorce. Edit. I want to thank you all for the support and the interest in my little story here. I've been getting a lot of repeat questions, so I'll put a little fact here. How long were we together? We were together about a year, give or take a little. Did I not notice the red flags? The relationship seemed relatively normal until we got married. She had her share of issues, bad childhood, severe anxiety, bulimia, but I was dumb and thought I could fix them. If there were red flags, why did I marry her? I had just had a really bad breakup with my girlfriend of 4 years a few months before meeting my first wife. We had made plans for our future, marriage, kids, the works, and the breakup really messed me up. I was insecure and afraid of being alone, so I probably would have married anyone. Young, dumb, and unaccustomed to heartbreak. Did I keep the dog? Of course. I may have gotten rid of the wife, but no chance in hell was I getting rid of the dog. We took her and moved her far away, and now she's got lots of people around all the time to spoil her and fatten her with treats. She recently got a little brother who tolerates her. Are things better now? Very much so. I took a few years being single and just learning who I was and wanted to me. I'm happily remarried, and this time it's stuck. And I'm stuck. My wife won't let me leave. Send help. I had 2 good friends who were brothers. They were party animals. Out drinking at bars all the time. Sleeping with different women every weekend. Recreational drugs. Their idols were the whole Jackass crew back in the day. They just loved that whole bachelor lifestyle, and to be honest, I was a bit jealous of the fun they were having. I was in a longer term relationship for many years. Eventually the younger brother settled down and got engaged to a really nice girl. Something broke in the older brother's mind, and he suddenly was in some sort of race to get married before his younger brother. He kept living the bachelor lifestyle, but then one day announced to us all he was engaged to be married, and with his fiancée they'd set a wedding date to be married 6 months before his younger brother. None of us ever met this girl before we found out he was engaged. When we did meet her, it was clear he'd not been open with her about his lifestyle. She was a very prim and proper lady, very shy, quiet. They worked together, so she only knew the professional side of him. Over the months leading to the wedding, his partying kept going. He was cheating on her with one-night stands, but she was oblivious. Our group of friends told him he needed to tell her what he was doing, but he refused. I was nominated to be the one to tell her before it was too late. I met her for coffee and told her how he was cheating on her and the drugs he was using. She was generally taken aback, but she told me to my face she was still going to marry him and that she could change him. I left with a clear conscience after that. Fast forward to their wedding day, and it is an absolute mess. He is drunk before the reception even starts, and passes out in a corner sometime after dinner. As I'm leaving, I say goodbye to his bride, and I can see it in her eyes. The definition of regret. They ended up being together for exactly 1 year. Her final straw was when she really wanted to go out for a special brunch for their 1-year anniversary. She made plans at a fancy place. He told her he was going out to party the night before, but would be home in time to get some sleep before their anniversary started. He ended up hooking up with some chick he picked up at the bar, and when he finally made it home the next afternoon, his wife had packed her bags and left. I felt bad for her at first, but then I remembered how I laid everything on the table with her, and she still did it. I've never seen or spoken to her again. My friend ended up repeating his pattern. He is on his 4th marriage now, but does seem to have finally settled down this time. Wasn't my marriage, but I'm involved in the story. Basically, my ex-girlfriend's boss left his wife on their honeymoon because she and him were having an affair. They had the wedding and flew off to Bali, but he was sneaking off into the bathroom to send my then girlfriend dick pics from his honeymoon. I saw one of the pictures and confronted her. She admitted to it and messaged him back to tell him that I had found out. My understanding is that he basically came out of the bathroom, told his wife I think this was a mistake. We shouldn't have gotten married, got on a plane and flew home. Left her there on her own, on her faking honeymoon, with no explanation. In the end, I had to be the one to go over to her place and tell her what had really happened because he wouldn't own up to it. So I think the marriage lasted all of about 3 days. Edit. So just to add a few additional details to clarify, as I wasn't expecting this to get so much attention. This all happened like 10 years ago. She was my first girlfriend from high school and we had been together for 10 years, so I was 24 at the time. I'm actually fine about it now because we were unhappy and it really wasn't meant to be, and I'm happily married. The husband and my ex were having a full-blown affair and had been sleeping together for several months before the wedding. It wasn't just dick pics being sent. He was also sending her just generally sexual and love-a-dove messages about how much he missed her and how much he wished it was her there with him instead of his wife. However, the message which I happened to see, which blew the whole thing wide open, did include a dick pic, as well as a sexual picture she had sent him in return. He walked out on his new wife because he knew he had been busted, but didn't tell her why. So she was sat around thinking she had done something wrong. A couple of weeks later my friend called me with a message. You see, I had told him what happened, and he had told someone who actually ended up knowing her and had told her. This is how she learned the truth. Then, through that same chain of people, she got the message back to me requesting that I call her so we could talk, along with her number. I had actually met her a couple of times before through my ex and her work, but I barely knew her. So, I called her. She invited me over, and we had a long talk. I told her everything I knew from my side. She hadn't learned any of this until she had heard it through that friend, so it was pretty rough. I moved on quickly, but they had a really rough and messy divorce. Australian law says you must first try a 1-year separation before you can divorce. However, I did run into her a few years ago, and she was remarried and seemed very happy. As for the two offending parties, they did start dating publicly, which I think caused a lot of dramas and friction in their personal lives. Hugely so at their work with the other employees, as you can imagine. I heard they broke up after a few years together. Edit 2. Bonus gossip. Also, my wife just reminded me of another detail. I've told her the story before. My ex was invited to the wedding, but I wasn't. She said it was because they were trying to do it on a budget. I found out later that at the wedding she got really drunk and upset, obviously because her newfound fella was marrying someone else, and sort of started causing a scene. It was apparently bad enough that the best man had to get her in the back of his car and leave the wedding early to take her home, as it looked like she was about to spill the beans in front of everyone. We married legally when we found out I was pregnant after trying for 3 years. The plan was to marry at the courthouse, then get some tests done to see why I wasn't getting pregnant. Well, it happened backwards. By the time I gave birth we were already married legally, but not in front of a priest, and we planned to have our wedding and to baptize a son. So a 2-in-1 ceremony, and when our son was 5 months old I went to our home country to prepare everything that needed to be prepared for the big event, and my husband stayed in the country where we were living and working. This was roughly 3 weeks before the event. The time I spent away from my husband felt like a breath of fresh air. Like I was spending my days underwater, and I was finally free to just breathe. I reverted to my old happy self, smiling and joking all day along with family and friends. I realized it, but I decided to go on with the wedding as we already had a kid, and I really thought, after everything, my husband will be less manipulative and less controlling, and he would realize what truly matters. But no. He came home 1 week before the wedding, and we fought, and I cried almost daily. The wedding did happen and everything was somehow perfect, and 2 days after the wedding we got into a huge fight about some missing money. In my country the bride and the groom receive money from everyone invited to the wedding, and he ended up leaving me and our son. We divorced 4 months later. I realized a lot of stuff being away from him, but I lied to myself that he would care about me and our son, but he only ever cared about himself. I met her as a fellow soldier in 8. She was crazy fun, but then something happened where she failed out and then switched dates. Before she left, we got engaged after going out for about 5 months. At her other post, she called and said a few times she just wanted to be with me, so she would fake a section 8 to get a discharge and come back and join me. So all this goes down, and as it turns out, it wasn't fake. She was full-blown bipolar with a few other personality disorders thrown in the mix. It was about 10 months of holy hell. She had no job, but expected me to support her lifestyle on a private salary. She got a new car, upgraded from an apartment to townhouse, and managed to rack up another $30,000 in credit card debt in my name. I should put her on the card in case of emergencies. I didn't know this, because she hid the bills. This doesn't include the physical attacks. She would start fist fights with me out of the blue, sometimes in public just to see if tough guys in the area would react, or run into the bedroom when I was sleeping and just dump cold water on me just for fun. The final straw was when she wanted her ex-boyfriend from high school to come live with us because he was a recovering junkie and needed help. So I put her on a plane to go get him, but with a one-way ticket. She then cleaned out what little cash I had in the bank account, called my 1SG to tell him I wasn't supporting her, but then disappeared entirely. I looked her up years later. She was busted with said boyfriend for a long string of shoplifting charges and trying to fraudulently claim various benefits from 3 different states at the same time. It was a meth junkie thing. A 10-month marriage, technically 2 years. The judge granted the divorce after 1 year of abandonment. Took me 6 years of working 2 to 3 jobs to dig my way out. This was all before the age of 21 for me. My story but not my story. I was 6 years old when my mom got married. My mom isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. My uncle worked at a state mental hospital, has some big wig now, and introduced my mom to this man working there. I think he was the janitor. Years later they spoke of it, and I distinctly remember my uncle saying, "I introduced you to him as a joke. I didn't expect you to run off and marry the guy." I answered the door when he picked her up for their first date. It was the first time I felt a primal instinct. I opened the door, looked at this man, and felt my heart and intestines just drop into the pit of my stomach. Didn't know the reason he was there, just a very bad feeling about him. So I did what any intelligent 6-year-old would do, and slammed the door in his face. She married the guy after a couple of months. To be honest, despite my first instincts on the guy, I ended up really liking him. He would shower me with attention and take me out to get food if I asked. I was neglected and made my own food a lot. I only remember good things about the guy. Honestly, looking back, he may have been grooming me. Either he was, or he just cared about a sad little girl, and it looked bad because he was insane. Regardless, I trust my instincts, and looking back I think he was some type of dangerous. I don't remember the crazy behavior. I've been told a lot of pacing and speaking/yelling to himself at night. I probably slept through it. My mom divorced him after 3 months and he tried to file for custody of me. I was warned to watch out and find an adult immediately if I see him. He showed up once more with flowers for my mom. I saw him walking up and ran inside. I wonder how things turned out for poor Willis. Okay, so this isn't an ended in a year story. It's actually worse, because it's still going 13 years later, but I figured it would be okay as this has turned into more of a terrible marriage stories thread. Okay, so I know a guy, not a friend, just a guy I know. He was a Marine, 20 to 21 years old. He meets a girl, she's fun, ex-meth head, cute, kinda wild, dumb as a brick, but hey, he's no Einstein himself, so it works. Smash cut to a few months later, she's pregnant. They decide to get married and have the kid. Again, young dumb kids. Well, he gets deployed to Afghanistan right before or after the kid is born. Can't remember. He is gone for like 16 months or something, and when he gets back he find out his sweet bride, who has been cashing his checks and living in his house, has gotten back with her meth dealer ex, is doing meth and faking the dealer with the kid there in the studio apartment. So basically he comes back to find his kid has had a front row seat to mommy sucking the pipe, then sucking his pipe for the first year and a half of his life. Now here's the sad part. He went from "I'm getting a divorce" to "she made a mistake and I forgive her" in like 4 days. Now, like 15 years later, they are still together. They have had like 2 more kids since then, live with his parents, both work dead-end jobs, and are totally life-ached. Every few years she has an issue of some sort, and like moves out for a month or something, then they reconcile and everything is fine. I know all this, because they love to play it all out on Facebook, which was humorous, until I saw that their son now has a Facebook and sees everything. Basically the story of marriage, that should have ended in under a year, but didn't. About halfway through the wedding planning, I was young, and did not know how to extract myself from the situation without causing disappointment. I guess it was pretty obvious to everyone though. My mom says that the limo to the venue felt like a hearse, and my dad, while walking me down the aisle, told me that I didn't have to go through with it. All in all, it was a 40k very nice party, and I left him 2 months later. The reasoning: I had outgrown him, more or less. The relationship should have ended around the time we became engaged. We weren't aligned in regards to ambitions and long-term expectations. I wanted a lifestyle that he would never have been able to provide or even accompany. I wanted a partner who I could feel admiration and respect for, in addition to love. I just did not feel that for him, and I knew that I never would. The breakup was not peaceful. He would not accept that it was over, and his refusal to respect my wishes caused me to absolutely revile him. He made the divorce process as unpleasant as possible, and I lost a lot of friends, but it was 400% worth it. Nearly 9 years have passed, and I'm engaged to a man who is everything I have ever wanted. Last I heard, my ex still claims that I ruined his life and squawks tales of my horridness to anyone who will listen. Go figure. Edit. To those who feel inclined to criticize me for having had the audacity, gracious, to leave man I no longer loved, and who I desired no future with, please humor me by detailing how you feel the situation could have been better handled. I can only assume that some of you can offer less horrific solutions than the one I opted for. I was a pharma sales rep, and we hired a new guy, Mr. Super Sexy. He was a bold-faced pathological liar from the get-go, and was used to getting his way, because he was so good looking. I did not have to work with him directly as we each had a different portfolio of products, but I went to the same offices as he did, and every office staff raved about this guy, at first. At a regional sales meeting he met a very nice woman from a very rich family and they started to date. I did not pay any attention until one day I was in an office way out in the high desert of CA, and I was quizzed about this guy by the older ladies on staff. Who was he? Where did he come from? Is he married or involved with anyone? It had been 6 months with this guy, but I honestly did not know, so later I asked one of my coworkers, and learned he was married to the rep he met at the sales meeting. They had eloped in Vegas and her parents gave them a house and a Porsche. I also learned he was getting it on the side from about 5 different women in different offices, and the older ladies in the one office that asked about him could not believe this super sexy guy from LA was truly unattached and looking for love in the Mojave Desert. I did not have the heart to call the wife as we barely knew each other. I decided to let it all come out on its own, which it did finally, and what a horrible mess. He got the Porsche after giving her VD I think on their first anniversary, which is how she found out, and it was just so sad. She fell hook, line and sinker. Luckily her parents were able to bail her out, but it was messy. Not my story, but it's my grandma's. But the craziest story I ever heard in my life: he tried to kill her on their honeymoon. It all started when she was a sophomore in high school. She went on her first date, he was a senior, and drove her to a lookout spot and rapped her. She lost her virginity, got trapped and became pregnant all in one fatal swoop. Well, back in that time in my culture the thing to do was to relocate and get married, so she moved halfway across the country and married my grandpa. She had my mom at 16. He was abusive, so she left shortly after. She proceeded to live a pretty good life as a single mom. She was a model and traveled the world with some pretty famous people before she became religious and changed her luxury globe-trotting lifestyle. You might be wondering by now why I haven't mentioned the killing at the honeymoon part, because that's not when it happened. About 20 years after she left him, she ran into him at a wedding. She said he was so charming and seemed like he had changed and he was doing everything to have her back after all the years blah blah blah. Well, she fell for his charm and they had a small wedding shortly after. After the wedding he seemed in a bad mood. By the time they got on the flight my grandma asked why on earth he was in such a bad mood on their wedding night. I shit you not, I can't make this up. He legit turns to her and says, I only married you so I can kill you. She was like, what the fuck? Not another word was spoken the whole flight and she kinda brushed it off and they got to the hotel room about 8 hours later. Well, he wasn't joking folks, he took a large metal object and proceeded to beat her on the head and left her for dead. She miraculously survived and needless to say they again broke up. This is why I believe my grandma's story. I eventually met my grandpa once when I was in high school. He had a wife of 20 years and a daughter a couple years older than me. He seemed totally normal from the outside, but I believed my grandma for a few reasons. 1. My grandma is very religious and all about telling the truth and just very innocent in that way. 2. He completely disowned my mom, never acknowledged her existence. She would try to reach out, and he would straight up say not to contact her, except when his wife insisted on meeting us, because they are normal nice people. 3. My grandma never told me that story until after I met him. I knew nothing about him when I met him, except that he didn't really talk to my mom. Well, you know when someone gives you that feeling in your gut, like they are evil or psychotic, when you have nothing to base it on except the feeling of your stomach literally turning over? Well, that happened, and I always thought it was me, like I was feeling off that day, but hell no, after my grandma told me that story years later I finally knew why I always thought something was wrong with him. My story is different from the others here. This is hard to think about clearly or explain, but I'll try. Still not sure if I'm the bad guy or not. My ex and I broke up because I was grieving my mom and probably was a wreck to be around. I moved into an apartment and lived on my own for a year, and my psychiatrist prescribed me a huge amount of Xanax 9 mg/day, which I took as prescribed. I was a literal zombie. I somehow made it through the year of that apartment lease alive and paid my bills on time, but then my dad started struggling with alcoholism while grieving my mom and I realized it was time to move home to a city about 1 hour away. When I made that decision I met this guy, who I'll call Sid. Sid wasn't attractive to me physically, but he treated me with an unfamiliar level of kindness. I kept feeling like I needed to pay back his favors, and that got me to the point where I felt guilted into becoming his girlfriend. I learned how to pretend to be attracted and just kind of deal, and went to my best friend to explain that I didn't feel much, and she told me to give the nice guy a damn chance for a once, and that my inability to accept a kind person was why I kept ending up in dead-end relationships. I continued to take the medication, which I had to buy a lockbox for, because he was a recovered heroin addict who used methadone daily. Sid warned me he may want to take my meds. The point where I stuck to him was when I met his mom, who was similar to mine, who had passed. I kind of stayed in the relationship so I could have a mom. He helped me move my stuff and then asked me to marry him. I blankly, numbly said yes. I was excited to have a mom again. We had been dating about 5 months. I moved back to my old town and rented a house with him and weaned off the medication because I felt so dull. I started to realize that I'd made a huge mistake and caught him shooting up. Some more lies came to the surface too. We started fighting. He was pretty aggressive and I was afraid he would become violent, and I told him to get out. I was done. The marriage was over within 4 months. He stalked me for a while after, but that came to an end when he went to prison for stabbing someone. He's in there for 8 years. I recovered, stopped taking the medication, started therapy, blah blah. Fast forward to today, and I'm married with a toddler and a baby on the way. That life is unrecognizable to me now, and I'll never quite be able to tell the whole story without feeling some guilt and also going off in about 10 different directions. I wanted a mom. I was numb with depression and over-medicated. I ignored red flags. It was a whole thing. He changed the day after we married. His ideas of what a wife's duty was didn't exactly fit with mine. He expected me to cook, clean and pick up after him, as well as working a full-time job. I earned a good wage working in a factory, and before we married I supported him financially through college, on the understanding that once he got a job he would support me through nursing school. However, when he got a really good job, earning more than twice what I earned, but said he couldn't understand why I would give up a perfectly good job and refuse to support my nursing ambition. He refused to share his earnings, insisting that all bills, including his gym membership and bodybuilding supplies, were split between us. Then what I had left out of my wage, £0, I could keep, and what he had left out of his he could keep for himself. To top it all off, I also couldn't refuse to have sex with him, wherever, whenever and however he wanted, or so he thought. Needless to say, we argued a lot. 3 months into the nightmare marriage he stayed out all night, and when he came home told me that he had been with a girl he'd picked up at a bar the night before. He tried to use it to teach me a lesson, saying if I was going to be difficult he would get his fun elsewhere. I kicked him out and divorced his sorry ass. Best decision of my life. When he laid hands on me, I stayed though. Then I got pregnant, and he decided he didn't want me pregnant anymore. He tried to kick the baby out of me. That was the first time I fought back, and I walked out that night. He continued to try and get me alone, and lay hands on me though. The marriage lasted less than a year, but I couldn't get my divorce until after my son was born. My divorce was finalized 14 days after his birth. After he was born, I decided to go back to school. He was waiting for me one day outside and pinned me to my car and started punching me. I went to school with a 3rd degree black belt, and other students screamed for him after they came out and saw the attack. He chased him off and then pulled some strings at the school. It now became mandatory for us to take self-defense to graduate. Don, the black belt, taught the class. 6 weeks after we started, my ex cornered me at my mom's house. He pushed me down the hall and tried to get me into the back bedroom. I knew he'd kill me if he got me in there. Thankfully, the door was closed. When my back hit that door, it triggered a level of rage I hadn't felt before since. I don't even remember what I did to him. Next thing I know is the cops are there and trying to arrest me for assault. I beat his ass. Thankfully, they took him away in cuffs instead. Something to do with the OFP I had against him and the bruises on my chest from him pushing me down the hall. Don also taught the PD self-defense on the side, and one of the officers told him, so he was waiting to give me a big hug the next day at school. That was the last time that man ever laid hands on me. I hope he has had a horrible and miserable life. He was banned from my son, so no more contact, after he turned 5. My son will be 25 next month. I think I knew when we were sitting at the courthouse waiting to be seen. I kept hoping my friend, who was my witness, would stop it from happening, but she just watched the train wreck happen. We lived in a state where, if one person wanted a divorce, but the other didn't, it was really hard to get a divorce. Maybe a month into the marriage, he started berating me for my clothes being too tight, because when we went out, people checked me out and somehow that was my fault. When we fought, he would leave and turn off his phone, heavily implying I was going to some girl's house to sleep with them. He'd come back around 3 in the morning, drunk, after gambling a bunch. I told him I wanted a divorce, and he said good for you, I don't, and that was the end of that. By 5 months, I wanted to just end my life, because I couldn't fathom growing old with him. He would always quote scriptures at me to prove what a bad wife I was. He blew up at me when he discovered I was still on my birth control. He started throwing mine out and trying actively to knock me up, but I didn't want kids yet, especially not with him. About 8 months in, I was pregnant, and we got into a fight. He pushed me into a rocking chair and then left to do his cheating, gambling, drinking thing with me passed out on the floor because I'd hit my head. I woke up and there was a lot of blood. My landlord took me to the hospital, and since my husband's phone was off, he didn't come until about 9 in the morning the following day. He first yelled at me for not being home when he got home. Then he yelled at me for being careless enough to lose his baby. I called my dad for help when he was at work, and my dad flew out there to get me and move me out of state. He harassed me for months after that. Eventually my dad and I went back with a police officer to mediate, plus our landlord's husband plus 2 moving guys, to get all my stuff. Not me, but about a wedding I was invited to. I knew the bride, and I'll start this off by saying she has always been an extremely entitled, mean girl, wannabe model/influencer. Get ready and buckle up. The bride and groom's entire relationship was a whirlwind. She met the guy at a job interview. When he interviewed her, disclosed he would be her boss, and then asked her out for drinks, which she accepted. They were engaged in 6 months and married 6 months later. He was financially very comfortable, but was cheap AF and wouldn't pay for wedding. She had very big ideas of what kind of wedding she wanted down to very specific details, and it landed on renting a Z-list celebrity's international beach house and having a bikini reception while wearing a custom thong in front of grandparents and every single coworker. Her parents paid for every detail of the wedding, which quickly went from being a $40K affair to over $100K. Parents had to get a second mortgage to help pay for wedding and put themselves in a shit financial situation. But hey, what baby wants, baby gets. In lieu of traditional wedding gifts, the bride and groom set up 2 specific crowdfunding websites. One asking for down payment help for their first home, and the other paying for every single element of their 2-week South Pacific honeymoon. They were very specific to anyone sent an announcement. If you weren't contributing to one of their websites, they wanted cash. Don't even think about sending a blender. So, comes the destination wedding day. Really, it was a full week. With over 150 family, friends, colleagues flying in from all over the country and internationally. It was clear the wedding was an enormous setup for Instagram content, and there was little to no inclusion of any family or friends. Bride openly mentioned guests who didn't fit her aesthetic weren't going to be photographed. There were more photos of her in her custom thong than with her groom, parents, or grandparents. It was just so trashy and embarrassing. Cut to their insane 2-week honeymoon in the South Pacific. Everything was paid for by the generosity of family and friends. Daily, we Instagram followers were graced with photos of her bare ass on the beach, but no photos, or seriously cropped photos, of hubby. It was hot. Cut to a week later, after honeymoon, they had a solid home down payment from their other website and started looking at real estate. They find a home they like and used said money to put down. 1 week later, we are at basically a month post-wedding. The bride goes missing. Yes, missing. Groom shows up at acting all sorts of bizarre and hysteric to in-laws, saying he actually does know where she is and that she went to visit a friend from the internet, and I know it's a man, but I trust her. She stays with random internet dude for a few weeks, charging everything to her husband's credit card, and 3 weeks later they file an annulment. Bride is engaged, at annulment, to random internet dude who we find out was a follower from Instagram, and also who all the thong photos were for. She discloses later on, when questioned by her family what the fuck she didn't call it off if she knew she wasn't in love with groom #1, that she just didn't find him that attractive anymore, and 2, she knew all the photos she'd take at the wedding and honeymoon would be good for her Instagram and potential modeling portfolio. Gross, 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 gross. I started having cold feet about 2 weeks before the wedding. Found out a week before the wedding I was pregnant, and took it as a sign that it was meant to be. As soon as the wedding band was on my finger, he did a 180 and basically made my life a living hell the entire time I was pregnant. He was verbally, emotionally, and financially abusive. He hit me once, but said it was an accident. Baby was born, and he got worse. Drank non-stop, wouldn't work, faked everything with a pulse in town. At one point he smashed the windows out of my car with his steel-toed boots, threatened to bury a hammer in my father's skull, said he would go to the woods with my dog and kill them both, and threatened to burn down the neighborhood just to get to me. I suppose it was over a year that we were married, but, factoring in restraining orders, and his inability to be a decent husband or father, and him living away from us, it was basically over before it got off the ground. He left the province a week after our kid's first birthday and continued to fuck with my life while doing everything in his power to not be held accountable for support. He didn't even bother to respond to the paperwork for our custody hearing and went underground to avoid child support. After we were legally separated for over 5 years, he claimed me and my son as dependents on his taxes. What a faking nightmare. I had to prove to crap that I had sole custody the entire time, never saw a penny of support from him, paid for everything myself, and had subsidies for daycare. Neighbors, the daycare owner, and members of my family all had to write letters verifying what the truth was. In the meantime, I was left without GST, child benefit, or an income tax return, because CRA held the payments until it was proven that I wasn't defrauding them. The real kicker was that CRA knew his address and wouldn't provide us with it because maintenance enforcement and CRA do not share information. 15 years later, and as recently as November, he sent me a FB message saying, "What a hoe," the one before that he called me a goat faking savage. Sounds like a man that really wants to be a positive, productive role model. Joke's on him though, cause my kid is faking awesome and he has a real dad that loves him to the end of the earth. Phew, sorry for the blog. But let this be a lesson. No matter how faking in love you are, you do not know someone well enough to marry them after 5 months. I know. I cringe to the core when I think about it. TLDR, I could handle the beatings, getting me fired from 3 jobs, the emotional manipulation, the loss of friends, but when she demanded I quit my job for not instantly providing my Facebook password while I was actively on the clock, that was the last straw. Middle length story, she was good all the way through, dating, engagement, everything. Looking back, there were a few red flags, but compared to my last few relationships, they didn't look so big. She had PTSD and was very bipolar, but hey, I'm borderline, autistic, and have a history of depression. As long as she was treating me well, I can handle mental health struggles. Well, fast forward to the marriage, a year earlier than I was comfortable with, but I didn't have it in me to fight her. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship. A few months in, she's been the direct cause of my losing 3 jobs, which is a big problem for me. If you wanna treat me bad, that's one thing, but my coworkers aren't dating you and shouldn't have to deal with your crap. But she made like $16 an hour, so our bills were paid, and I focused on self-improvement and keeping the house in good shape. Then she started having panic attacks every time I left the house. Not even joking, I didn't see much of my friends for months because I'd have to rush home to comfort her within 10 minutes of arriving literally every time. A multi-year weekly gathering of autistic dudes watching cartoons and eating food and enjoying life was completely killed by her. Okay, bad, but I grew up worse. We can work on this, right? Just gotta work on boundaries. We set up a safe word for taking a breather if we think we are getting too worked up. I used it 3 times, and she ignored it all 3 times. I've never been violent, but it runs in the family. Once I was taking a breather because for the first time in my life I was legitimately worried I would lose control. She spent our rent money on McDonald's while pretending to work and tried to blame me because earlier that month I donated plasma to buy a book I wanted. I told her I was getting too worked up and needed a moment to myself to calm down. It was the first time in my life I can remember being angry, and it scared me. Her response was to physically hold me in place so I couldn't leave. Well, later on I finally get another job with a friend of hers who runs her own business as her personal assistant, which ended up amounting to me driving around helping various LGBT people with their lives, rides, cleaning, emotional support, etc., and getting paid $50/HR to do it. Getting paid to help people. I usually do that for free. Dream job. Well, about 48 hours into this job, I'm at home, and she takes my phone out of my hand and accuses me of cheating on her. So I told her, if she's so convinced I am, my phone is in her hand. Feel free to check it. I'm leaving to stay with a friend. At this moment she knows she messed up bad. It takes a lot to make me give up on a relationship. So, like any logical adult, she screams, throws the phone at me, and proceeds to take her 5 feet 1 inch frame and places it between me, 6 feet 2 inches, and the door. Now, I watched my parents regularly beat the heck out of each other, and how that went. I've also seen her play the innocent card with the police and get her way before. I'm not touching her. Not even a finger. I'm not stupid, and I'm actively non-violent. I don't even squish bugs. So, I put it in very easy terms. I'm leaving. Move. We live next door to the police station. I'll have them escort me out if I have to. She called my bluff. I dial 911. She snatches the phone before I can call, and in that instant leaves the door unguarded. I open it. She grabs me by the hair and beats the absolute fuck out of me. I waited out because I've taken worse beatings and I'm not about to catch a charge over trying to get to safety. I get out, and at this point, I'm pretty sure it's over between us, but I'm taking a week to think it over. I leave the phone and go. Drive to where my boss is. We've become decent friends at this point. She's at her side job, drag bar. It's a labor of love, so I make my way to the bar. Never been in a bar before. She meets me outside with clothes that aren't torn to shreds and takes me, blood, tears and all, to sit with her in the light booth and watch my first ever drag show. Everyone fawns over me and I end up on stage in a wig, as one does. She has me turn off my location and change all my passwords. You know, you're really bad at being an abuse victim. Well, wife loses her mind. Long story short, there is a suicide attempt and she's an inpatient. Great. At least she's getting treatment, because she's clearly not doing well. We've changed meds 9 times, because they weren't working. We just have to try again, right? Eventually, it will get better. I come home, she gets out. I'm still very guarded, but willing to try. Work again. A friend came out to her parents and they disowned her. She's crying. I'm hugging. Wife calls. I don't answer. I'm busy. She shouldn't have a cell phone anyway, and whatever it is, this is more important. I shoot her a text, hey, I'm working, it's urgent, I'll call you back in like 5 minutes. Absolute chaos. She calls me. She calls my boss. She calls my friends demanding they get me to respond to her. Well, I calm down the sobbing girl, call her back, like I said I would. Turns out she finally discovered all my passwords had changed because she wanted to read all my messages again, and she demands I give her all of my passwords right now. That's not possible. I randomly generate them. I can't just spend the next hour listing them off. I'm being paid to do a job, and so is she, and this was holding both of us up. She already should have been fired 4 times over for her missing work, but Ada covered it. She'd work maybe 10 hours that month of her full-time job. The rest of the time she just really didn't want to go today. Or better, she would leave in the morning, pretend to go to work, then sit in the parking lot for 9 hours, occasionally getting fast food, until it was time to go home. We got evicted 3 times over this. When we go home I'd be happy to give them to her, but she is not going to demand them from me, especially not over the phone. Now I have work to do. I've got to go. I get a text, I can't do this anymore. Quit your job. I don't trust the people you work with. They're putting bad ideas in your head. That was a mistake. I shot a text back. I don't want this to work more than I want to not be in a toxic relationship. We are done, of course. She told everyone I was so terrible for breaking up with her over text, but always leaves out how she had physically attacked me the last few times I had seen her in person, in public no less. I had witnesses. The longer I've been away from her, the more of her lies I've discovered. She cheated on me regularly, had the guy I was supposed to not worry about in our marriage bed within 4 hours of us breaking up. He lived about 2 hours away, and my favorite one, apparently I was with her for 2 years total, and never knew she smoked cigarettes. Why would you even hide that? She apparently smoked like a chimney around all her friends, but never told me. She also had told all her friends and mine that I was abusive, manipulative, and that I was a sexual predator. I've been openly asexual for years. I literally could never have sex again and be fine. It took 3 days of us working together, and the more we talked, the more we Spider-Man pointed at each other about the wife and her manipulation. Apparently she had been playing everyone against everyone for her own benefit, and as soon as we were actually able/allowed to talk to each other, everyone in her life basically simultaneously went, hey, this was all lies. You're actually a good person. Fast forward months later, and I've graduated from assistant to business partner, own a house, and sent the positive pregnancy test in the mail with the divorce papers. Turns out I'm not asexual, I'm just not attracted to people who abuse me, and also I have a type. Yikes, but only after I dragged my feet so long she had to miss her divorce cruise because her passport was in her maiden name and she couldn't get it changed back fast enough. Fuck you, Keely. You shouldn't be taking a cruise at the height of COVID anyway. Ironically, she used to brag about how big she was in the LGBT community, and now the local community hates her. Meanwhile, when she met me, I was telling people I was an LDS conservative, but absolutely not a Republican. Fuck Trump, and I now also work at the gay bar on the side, and I'm practicing for my first drag performance with help from my new partner. I've opened up and become more social, my depression completely disappeared, and I'm doing better than ever. On the good side, I have a partner now who isn't perfect, but is constantly improving. I know how to set and keep boundaries now. I didn't get a disease and refused to get her pregnant within a year of knowing her. So, all in all, I walked away better off. Mental illness isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility. Don't use it as an excuse to be an abuser, and don't excuse abuse because the source is mentally ill. Set boundaries. Keep them. Not me, but someone else. A few years ago my spouse and I took a cruise. Big deal for us, because it was our first vacation leaving the kids with their grandparents. Anyway, there was this mid-20s looking couple we noticed a few days in. The guy had a cast on his leg, and she was pushing him in a wheelchair. At first we thought nothing of it beyond, well that stinks. Right, to have a broken leg on your vacation? Well, then we found out that the story of this couple had gone all around the ship like wildfire. Apparently, they were on their honeymoon, and the very first stop, the Bahamas I think it was, they went to a beach and the guy got really drunk. He climbed up this rock face, fell off and broke his leg like a drunken dummy does. And to boot, it was apparently a bad break, that they didn't have the money for the local air to set properly. I'm probably mangling that detail a bit. So they elected to get a cast and finish the cruise knowing he would need to have it reset when they got back to the States. We saw this couple several more times over the week, the girl always pushing him in this chair, and you could see both of their faces getting progressively more pissed off each day. Like they would come to the pool deck and sit there grumpily staring at the water. Always wondered what happened to that couple. My ex-best friend married an asshole after just 2 weeks of dating, although we had all gone to the same high school and were distant acquaintances. She lied to me and her other best friend, inviting us to a 4th of July BBQ when really she wanted us to come to Reno with her to watch her get hitched. She told none of her family or friends before she did it, but then came home in tears and told me how much she regretted her family not being there. So I got roped into being a bridesmaid at a fake wedding to cover up the real elopement. She ended up at my house 2 weeks later sobbing, telling me that her husband had strangled her and he was hitting her. I hid her for 2 days while her husband sent me absolutely vitriolic messages telling me that he'd kill me if he found out I was hiding her. I want to call the police. My friend wants to go back to him. She goes back to him and I don't hear from her for 6 months. Next communication I get from her is a picture of an ultrasound. She refuses to text back or pick up the phone. Next communication after that is a phone call 9 months later asking if I would watch her kid. I agreed but told her we need to talk first. Well, during that talk she tells me that she stopped talking to me because I'm liberal. We had been friends for 10 years before this, and my beliefs have never been a problem before, and that the husband hated me for it. He also still hated me for sheltering her after the wedding. When she told me that he was doing drugs and had lost his trucking job too, I told her she needs to protect herself and her baby and get out. The friendship ended because she told me my husband was right about you. You don't understand anything. You're not a true friend to me, and you never have been. I just said okay and left. She's tried many times to reconnect but I'm done. Last I heard she had another kid with him. He became more abusive and more strung out on meth, and eventually she left him, maybe 2 years after the fake wedding. She's remarried now to a guy that looks like he's on meth, but go off I guess. Well, we never actually made it to the marriage part, but with my now ex-girlfriend, we went from a 7 years dating relationship and living together, to her asking me to marry her on a beach in Mexico, to me kicking her out of our apartment in 6 weeks. she asked. I said yes. We got back, and 2 days later she started hanging out with the roommate of her best friend. A weekend she was asking to crash at their apartment. A week later she had stayed there 3/7 nights that week, and I was asking what's up. She told me about him for the first time. I didn't know her friend had a roommate until now. That weekend, and 2 more nights crashing there. At this point I'm getting suspicious. She asked if she could invite both the friend and roommate over for dinner and games. I said sure, but I finally met him now 4 weeks in. We had a decent night hanging out, although at this point, now that I have seen them together I can tell something's up. After that night, I don't see or hear from her for 5 days straight. I finally call her and tell her she needs to come home so we can talk about what's going on. She puts it off for another 2 days. Finally comes home. I ask her point blank, are you cheating on me? She tells me she has feelings for him, has made out with him a few times, but hasn't slept with him. I don't believe her, but ask her if she loves him. She says I don't know, so I asked her if she would not stay there or see him until she's figured it out. She agrees. 2 days later she asks to stay at a different friend's place after her work shift. I know what's up. I tell her sure, if that's what you want. I don't hear from her again until that weekend. She shows up at our apartment that weekend, and I tell her to tell me the truth. She tells me she thinks she's falling for him, so I tell her we're done, and I don't want her at our apartment again until she's ready to pick up her stuff. Bonus: during the breakup she said she thinks she's poly and wants to see other guys. I told her I wasn't opposed to it. I've done the poly thing before, but that it means I can see other women as well. She said she couldn't deal with me seeing other women. She just wants to be able to see other men. Nope, of course didn't fly for weeks. After we broke up, I got a call at 3 AM begging for me to come pick her up. They had an open relationship. She slept with a guy in a bathroom at the bar they were at the night before. So he slept with one of his coworkers that day. She flipped out at him and threw a plate at him, and he smacked her. I showed up and drove her to a friend's house, but I knew there was no repairing the relationship after that. And that's how my 7-year relationship went from getting married to single and completely over it in 2 months. My first marriage lasted a little over 2 years, but I'm posting because I knew it was a mistake during our honeymoon. We went on a cruise. During said cruise we met another couple the first day that we liked, so we hung out with them a bit, had drinks, etc. I ended up getting very hurt/upset because he kept wanting to hang out with this couple and get drunk rather than spend time alone or one-on-one with me. I brought lingerie that I didn't even wear because he literally would just get drunk hanging out with this random couple and then just want to go to sleep. Our relationship progressed too fast before that, and I was also pretty down on myself and basically latched onto him just because he actually wanted to marry me and he wasn't a religious conservative like most men in rural Alabama. I completely disregarded many issues/red flags/incompatibilities because of that. Things were okay for about a year after the honeymoon, but that always stayed in the back of my mind. Our relationship completely deteriorated after we both went through some pretty significant hardships, deaths in the family, job loss, etc. I gained a ton of weight and he starting smoking weed from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed. I left in 2013, and leaving was the best thing I ever did. I went back to school, lost over 150 pounds, and married the actual love of my life last year. When you get that bad feeling in the pit of your stomach, don't ignore it. We didn't make it a year. I knew as soon as he proposed it wasn't right. We lived together, and I had been looking at apartments so I could move out on June 30th. He proposed June 10th. I knew if I said no, he would leave me stranded at his lake house, 3.5 hours away from where we lived. So I said yes. I tried to end the engagement a few weeks later, but he wouldn't accept it. A week before the wedding he told me I would no longer be able to see my friends after we married. It felt like a punch to the gut. I spent the night before wedding bawling to my best friend that I didn't want to go through with it. She was really encouraging and told me to cancel, that we would just make it a giant party with my friends and family. I couldn't do it. As I was about to walk down the aisle, I almost said something to my dad about calling it off. But he told me how proud and happy he was, and I couldn't do it. I went through with the wedding and the pictures from that day are now hilarious. I looked so fucking miserable. I was so grossly unhappy and terrified. It's all over my face. About a month into our marriage, his controllingness just intensified. It was horrible. I went out to dinner with a girlfriend one night and I didn't get home until 9:30. The horror. He freaked out and just started screaming at me. I went to bed, and while I was sleeping, he called my dad and told him I'm an alcoholic. I struggle with drinking now, but at the time, I never drank. He used it as a manipulation tactic. My parents tried to force me into rehab, and I finally opened up to my mom about what my marriage was really like. A few months later, I moved out. I know people judge me for such a short marriage, but I just couldn't do it. Life is too short to be so miserable. People get married because they see people like me and my wife. Been married basically since the first date. Like two freaking magnets. She is, even now, just so fucking hot. But also smart and considerate. A good person. I'm completely average, and she's just wow. Anyway, we dated for 2 weeks, and then ran off to Vegas and got married. Did he tell anyone? Were her parents pissed? Oh yeah. We kept asking each other as we drove from Phoenix to Vegas, is it the setch? We are not just getting married for setch. Not a chance. Sometimes a person meets their soulmate. If you're smart, you both grab on. We have been married almost 35 years, and she still impressed me with her charm and intellect. She also still makes me feel like a horny 16-year-old. God, but I do love that woman. She is my other half. People see a relationship like ours and think that that's how marriage is. What they don't see are the fights and the compromises and the personal and life changes one makes because of the love you feel. You don't make changes to placate or make the other happy. You change because doing so makes you a better man. It is hard work. It is a lifelong commitment to doing that hard work with no clear payout. I think maybe that's why people may sometimes marry. They do not understand the work you must be willing to put into the relationship. My nephew was brain damaged in an accident and had anger issues as a result. He met a girl at the rehab center where he was being treated who was also brain damaged and also had anger issues. What could possibly go wrong? They quickly set up housekeeping, and just as quickly the landlord threw them out for constant loud fighting. During one of their breaks from fighting, they decided to get married and could not be dissuaded. The wedding ceremony went okay, but they had such a huge fight in the limo going to the reception that the driver stopped and refused to drive any further till they calmed down. For their honeymoon, they went to a honeymoon resort on a secluded island. 2 days into it, the proprietor of the resort asked them to leave, yes, again for fighting. They refused to leave. The bride threw a shrieking tantrum, thus police were called. They were cuffed and taken off the island. They managed to somehow stay together for 6 more months. One night my phone rang. It was my nephew calling from a phone booth. He announced that his wife was trying to kill him. At that moment, there was a loud crash as she tried to demolish the phone booth by ramming it with their car. Fortunately, there were cement posts protecting the phone booth. I called the police and they arrested her. Her parents wouldn't bail her out, but at her hearing, the judge was going to release her on PR, but for some reason she got pissed at the judge and started cursing him out, so she went back to jail. His parents managed to get him into a mental health facility and a divorce was somehow accomplished. Not me, but a friend. He and his girlfriend dated for a few years when he proposed. Just a side detail, when they met, she was on the heavy side. She knew this, joined a gym, and worked her ass off to lose weight. She lost a ton of weight, I forget how much, but we are talking 100 plus lbs. She's feeling more confident and looks great. I had just started a new job, and was on probation, so I couldn't take the day off, a weekday, to attend the wedding, so I didn't go. The ceremony was very intimate. I didn't think anything of it. He has an itch job, where his schedule changes every 6 months. For example, he may work 9 PM to 5 AM, and have Mondays and Tuesdays off, so we didn't see each other as much, but would run into each other around the neighborhood. So, I had both him and his wife on social media. She's doing a lot of working out, and even trained for a 5K. She's looking great and feeling herself, so there were a lot of selfies at this point. Fast forward maybe 9 months after the wedding, I see a photo of her on Facebook in a bathroom with some guy I'd never seen with some caption like, "My B." I'm like, huh. I text my friend and he goes, well. Apparently shortly after they married, she decided she wanted an open marriage. He said absolutely not, this was not what I signed up for. Turns out she asked this because she was already seeing a guy on the side, Mr. Bathroom B, and wanted to somehow legitimize it. He found out, they had words, and she moved out. She maintains they had an open marriage to hide the fact that she cheated. They didn't make it a year before they separated and planned to divorce. I had an old account I rarely use that I forgot to block her from. A few months ago I see she's not only still with the guy, but had a baby with him. This all happened in less than 2 years' time. A little out of scope, but here's my story. Got married to someone that I knew was toxic. I was a young stupid sailor. She enjoyed telling us stories from he past. Here's a fun one from when she was a college cheerleader. A younger JV cheerleader asked her for some advice. Her response was something on the lines of, "Beach, get away from me. There ain't no J in my V." That comment is 100% indicative of the person she is. We were married for 6 years, but we are together for less than 18 months. Oh yeah, there was also that time when she swung her purse at me and hit me in the face. After that I was determined to never marry again. Dated a woman for about 6 years. We lived together for 3 or so years. She wanted to get married. I thought I would be able to convince myself while on deployment, so right before I left, I gave her the ring we picked out together and asked. Fast forward about a month into the deployment, we pull into Italy for some major repairs. I took 9 days of leave. She came to Napoli and we stayed at a friend's apartment. The first evening I tell her I can't do the marriage thing again. As you can probably imagine, that went over like a lead balloon. The rest of the trip was pretty awkward to say the least. We didn't last more than a few weeks after that. Towards the end of that deployment, I reconnected with someone I went to high school with. We weren't really friends back then, but there were less than 50 kids in the entire high school, so we knew each other pretty well. We started talking mid-June, dating after I got home, August I think it was. We married in October. That was almost 8 years ago. She's the most amazing woman. I've never been happier. Not me but an acquaintance. He was an older guy, still working, who said he had no savings. Everything he said has to be taken with a grain of salt. He lives in Texas and meets a older woman online in a Jewish dating app. They decide to marry. Now, all of her family, friends, and religious ties are back in a big city back on the east coast of the US. She apparently had a big apartment that she rented to a friend, keeping a lifeline. He told her that he kept a kosher kitchen/household. That was a lie. She wasn't extremely strict in following the rules, but he was far from kosher. She didn't find a large Jewish community in Texas like what he described and what she was used to. Frankly, Texas seemed pretty foreign to her, but she was willing to upend everything to be with him. One Monday morning about 6 months into the marriage, she packed up and left. She went back home without saying goodbye to anyone. He came home from work, and she and her stuff were nowhere to be found. Now, she was an adult. Both had been married before. I can only imagine that she had decided that was the best move for her. My problem was that he kept telling all these stories, some of which were pretty damning. She probably knew that she had a he said and he said situation. A mutual friend confirmed my suspicions that he had lied to her. From what little I saw as an acquaintance, she tried it, gave it a go, didn't like it, and having the means to, just up and left. Not even joking, my ex-husband was my best friend from 6th form college. All had the same friends etc. He joined the army, we started dating, I joined the RN, and got married to each other on Christmas leave in my basic training of January 2012. I actually pushed the wedding back because I'd waited 3 years to get in and wasn't starting all over again because the dates clashed. Go on my phase 2 training and he gets deployed with his regiment to Canada in June 2012. Long story short, found many images of child pornography on his laptop. 635 to be exact, and trust me when I said it faked me up for a while seeing those horrific things. Didn't even deny it, just begged me not to go to the police. I was shell shocked and ended up being another day/2 before I spoke to two of my closest friends/colleagues, and they got the ball rolling, and I got sent home on compassionate whilst they dealt with it. He gets arrested out there and sent back to the UK. I'm trying to deal with my whole life imploding and my trade training whilst trying to deal with a few other things that happened as well that I don't want to share. He pleads guilty, and due to being a first-time offender and good character, he only gets 2 years conditional sentence and 5 years on the register. He doesn't even get dishonorable discharged because his regiment is very well known, think royalty, and he gets to leave instead. I supported him through it all because I felt I owed him to get his counseling and sheet sorted. And then I put in for a posting elsewhere and left him. Few months later, by the time it's all been sorted, I ended up going off the deep end with suppressing all the faked up feelings I had, and ended up having to have counseling and being on antidepressants because I believed that there must be something wrong with me for him to do what he did. Didn't come out until I had my son from a later relationship and developed postnatal depression. He got an engineering degree out of it, all whilst on the register, knew Miss Us, no doubt, and told everyone I'd had an affair. His mother aided in that. I got left with all the bills, debt, severe confidence issues, and being labeled as an adulterer from all our former friends. I say former, if they believed him then I no longer wanted to waste my time on them. Faked me up for years, but I'm happily remarried and have an awesome little boy to boot. Yes, I still have problems from it all, but I'm in a much better place. Not me, but my best friend. We've known this girl since high school, and I've always found her to be vile and manipulative. Always fooling people into doing her bidding, dating people then cheating on them. She was messed up. But when we graduated we just parted ways, so I never gave it any thought past high school. Eventually I just forgot about her. At some point about 2 years ago, my best friend and her are connected and started dating. I hadn't seen her in years, so I decided to give her a chance, thinking that maybe she had changed. I imagine my best friend felt the same way. I soon realized that she hadn't changed and that she was just as manipulative, maybe even worse. But my best friend didn't see that. He insisted that she was different. I spent a good deal of their relationship trying to be happy for them, but I just couldn't. Being with her forced him into abandoning his family and friends. I was one of the last people that still was there for him. When they announced that they were getting married, I thought that on top of everything else, this was extremely soon. They had only been dating for no more than 4 months. Way too early. But he insisted that they were made for each other. In his words, the female version of himself. Against everyone's wishes, including my own, they got married. I'm sure it sucked for my best friend, because neither of his parents wanted to attend. Eventually his mother agreed to it, but his father still refused. When the wedding happened he never came. Their marriage lasted 1 month. Eventually it came to my best friend that she had been cheating on him, and in fact, had likely been cheating on him since before they were even married. It struck him hard. I hadn't spoken to him much since the wedding, but one night he came to my house, and I could tell he had been crying a lot. He told me what happened, and, while I can't say I was surprised, I knew something like this was going to happen. But I guess I just wanting to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was with my best friend after all. But I guess things never change. He's a lot better now, luckily. The divorce has been finalized, and he's now dating someone new. I like this girl a lot more, lol. I was married for 9 months. The first moment I knew something was wrong was when we were on our honeymoon. She said that she wanted to limit our sex during vacation. Came out of nowhere and seemed strange to me. Like if there is ever a time to go at it like animals, surely it's in Hawaii, right? I thought maybe it was something else and kind of ignored it. Not going to lie though, it kind of ruined the honeymoon. That stuck in my head for a while, even when we got back. She obviously began withdrawing from intimacy more and more while raising her demands and expressing more displeasure. She eventually started talking about divorce regularly. I don't really understand why she married me if she felt this way. It seems really dishonest in hindsight. Within 8 months she had emptied whatever accounts she had access to and concocted a story about physical and emotional abuse, laid a groundwork with the cops by making a few false reports, and started sharing these lies on social media to seize control of the narrative. It seems like a slow motion downfall in hindsight, but to me at the time it felt like a blitzkrieg. I was in a constant state of confusion. The second time I realized that I'd made a serious mistake was when she sat next to me one evening and told me she was going to make me cry. She went into a relentless speech about how little she thought of me, how I was less than a man, and she resented me for being a bussy. I was awful. She wasn't attracted to me. I meant nothing to her. I didn't say anything until she finished, so she started over again with the same speech. By the third time she said it, she finally got me to cry. After that she went back to our bedroom smiling. I still don't understand why she chose that moment to do that. It wasn't a continuation of some other argument. It just kind of happened. I also don't know why I forgave her for it at the time. I guess she was kinda right. So yeah, probably those two moments. I got married in January of 2019 and was separated from my now ex-wife by the same October. We'd been together almost 8 years, lived together for 5, and had known each other since school. First sign things weren't going well actually came about 5 months before the wedding, when she cheated on me. I was really hurt, but she apologized, and after a few concessions from her I thought we moved past it. Second sign was when it happened again in the April, after we were married. At this point, I lost all trust in her, but ultimately still loved her, so I stuck around. Over the next few months, the relationship broke down. I started checking her phone. We stopped having sex, barely spoke to each other. Eventually, she left me in October of last year. I was upset and tried to talk to her about it because I was scared of the change, but ultimately it was over. Nothing I could do about it. Looking back, I wish I'd left after the first offense, and I'm angry at myself that I didn't leave after the second. It's been almost a year, and I'm still not completely over the whole thing. I've been to therapy, cut off all contact, and started a new chapter of my life, but every now and then I catch myself replaying scenarios, or wondering if I should message her. I guess this has been a half rant / half warning. I didn't realize how unhappy and toxic my relationship had become until after the fact. If you are unhappy in a relationship or problems have been making things difficult, take an objective look at the relationship, talk to your partner about everything, and do not be afraid to be the one to walk away if you have to. About a week after the honeymoon, loudly cussed me out in a movie theater over something asinine, me implying she missed a part of the movie where the character said something in what was an otherwise normal and pleasant conversation. It continued for the next couple months with her feeling slighted at the most random and confusing things, leading to a range of subtle emotional abuse, telling me I had imagined her calling me names the day before, to other tirades and threats. I removed the 2 guns I owned from the house after she started saying things like, if you know what's good for you, you'll do XYZ. She found out the guns were gone and told me she wouldn't sleep in the same room with me unless I brought them back. She slept in a different room. That's when I truly realized I had made a mistake. I moved out the next morning while she was at work. This was also the time I realized that trusting American church culture to help me was a mistake, as all of this was described as normal relationships are hard an opportunity to man up. She didn't do anything like this during dating. Granted, we didn't live together, but it was a flipped switch after getting married. I will say that I have come to be thankful for what I learned and how I grew. I got married this month, 6 to 7 years later, to a fantastic person who I've been with for several years, after taking several years to look back and see where I needed to grow and why I settled for less than loving treatment from someone. So mistake is a tough word. I wouldn't be who I am without the mistake. We dated for a year. I was still in the service but transitioning out. Tied the knot right as I got out, and we moved back to my home state to live 6 months in. We are in our own apartment with 2 dogs. Things are okay. Christmas rolls around, and she goes back home to visit with her family. I hadn't seen mine for enough time that I wanted to stay back. She decides she doesn't wanna come back, and we begin the divorce. The divorce ends up taking 2 years too long, during which time she tried to reconcile what was left of our broken marriage during my time in the National Guard. I get a message on Messenger back when I still had my FB, and it's my soon-to-be ex-wife asking if we were sure we wanted this. I was doing my 2 weeks of training during this time, ultimately the worst time, to be bugging me with this shit. I'll admit, a part of me wanted to say no, wanted to stay married, and try to make it work. Yeah, no, I eventually learned that cunt was pregnant with another dude's kid. Not only that, but the dude was practically terminally ill. He spends most of the time living in a hospital bed due to being born with only one kidney. I'm not making fun of that fact, but what I did call my now ex-wife out for was that she basically Dear John'd me. Never saw that stupid movie, but I'm familiar with the premise. Stupidest idea for a love story. I feel sorry for their child. I heard it was born with quite a few health issues and physical deformalities. It was both of their first child, and after all that time she spent pestering me about having a kid. Like every faking day, I want kiddies no W. That's how the amazing act of childbearing that she longed for since we first met went for her. I'm not going to sit and cruelly say that it's an act of God or something, but that's probably a good headline for why you shouldn't commit adultery when you've tied the knot with someone else. I want to preface this with a couple things. Mine doesn't really fit the criteria exactly, but it only lasted a year and 2 months. We were only together 3 years total. Met online. He hitchhiked to my town to meet me in person, and then we just got an apartment together 2 years later, and we were married. I'm certainly not innocent in all of this. I had an online affair, and eventually after time and again discussing separation, just left him for my now partner. Ultimately I just realized I was entirely unhappy, but there were little signs I feel like I should have trusted my instincts about. He was a chronic liar. From day one lying about sexual conquests, to sound cool or something. Had a sob story about his childhood friend, whom he was in love with, that died when she fell through the ice on a snow machine. I was pretty surprised when she came to our wedding 2 years later. He had school debt he forgot about. My mum paid one off in a lump sum for him and allowed him to pay her back interest free. The second big one I didn't find out about until months before our wedding, at which point I told my mum I was having doubts. I should have ended it right there. He had a rude personality. Wouldn't even try to make nice with my friends. Was rude to waitresses. I'm very shy and non-confrontational, so I hated that. He used to speak to me in this fake abusive way when we were in public. Like use this clenched teeth voice and say that I better be blank or he'd give me a black eye. It was never serious, but there were times women would look at me in this terrible pitying way and I hated how that felt. I told him that I didn't like it and thought he understood, but it continued. After we split up he messaged all of my friends to tell them exactly how I had cheated on him and what a terrible person I was. Told some people about a made up pregnancy scare that never happened. We were going like 4 months between sets at that point anyway. Put some comments on Inga about how we had been together for 5 years and married for 3, which we hadn't even known each other for 5 years at that point. It was weird 4 years later, and I'm still happily with the person I left him for, with 2 beautiful children. I love all 3 to bits. He is with someone else as well, also with a child, and setting up GoFundMe pages to have his dental bills paid for. I have never once regretted leaving. I know I will be judged for being the unfaithful one, but it happened, and I can't take it back now. In any case, do what makes you happy, and forget the rest. Maybe just make it a bit less of a mess than I did. Made it all of 8 months. He stopped flossing, left literal sheet stains on the toilet seat, complained when I begged him to shower before oral sex. The smell was gross, and I had already gotten an infection. I cleaned everything. He cut me off from my family and close friends. He'd throw massive fights when I'd go get coffee with the girls or celebrated a birthday with one of my best friends. Complained when I worked overtime so we could pay our bills, forced us both into debt, and my credit took a -250 point deep dive. Acted like a spoiled brat around his mother, who gave him everything, gained 75 pounds after we moved in together, and threw fits when I refused to eat the same food as him. Talked non-stop only about himself. I couldn't think or breathe or function for a moment, but I had to always choose the things he wanted to watch or play or listen to. The minute he came home I'd have to turn everything of mine off and give him my undivided attention for the rest of the night. I met and fell in love with a man at work a few months into the marriage from hell who is amazing, and I'm still with him almost a year later. He helped me realize I was being emotionally abused to the point my therapist recommended I admit myself to a psych hospital for danger to myself. Severe suicidal ideation, letting go of the steering wheel when driving, extreme mental and emotional stress that presented in my skin whitening, and eyes sunken in. My coworkers tried intervening and feeding me and asking if I was okay. It's only been about 9 months since I left my ex-husband, and I'm halfway through the divorce process. I'm currently pregnant with a dog and a partner who helped me escape the emotional abuse. I'm happy and I never want to see that financial and emotional leech ever again. He was the definition of insufferable. Had I not met my new partner, and had he not showed me that I could be treated well, I probably honestly wouldn't be alive. I had about 3 severe emotional breakdowns and panic attacks were on the daily with my ex. I just couldn't do it. I left the house one night after he got upset over me running in the house to get a painful lie out, leaving him on the car, and he screamed, "Not everything is about you," and went to the bathroom. I grabbed my keys and bolted. I tried to leave once previously, but he ran after me literally and starting trying to get me to open the door. I panicked and tried to leave and crashed my car into a trash can and went full-blown nervous breakdown. I'm sure my once best friend will be one of these cases because the replies pattern here. Long story, I mean really long lol. She met him before high school, we were 14, and he was 20. I know he's the first and only guy she has been with. I believe they'll be one of those short weddings. They never live together, they are never really alone. Both live with their parents, and when they are together at home the parents are there of course. They fight like crazy. He uses a passive-aggressive tone with her all the time, like she was dumb or still 14-year-old. She is depressed and anxious, doesn't go to therapy because he, the fiancé, talks to me, he knows things. I warn her every year, every damn year, that's not how marriage works, that living with someone is different than dating someone, yet she claims I don't know anything, because she's with him since 2009, and I'm only 6 years total with my husband. Nowadays they like to pretend to be rich and fancy. Showed off the engagement ring, sharing its price at Instagram. She texts me sometimes saying she's sad because he doesn't give her attention, but pays her international trips. She shares all the details to their wedding online, like the receipts, the decoration, price, and etc. I know it's all a facade, because she told me her parents are paying for the fancy wedding, but they're in debt. I'll probably won't be invited, because the fiancé thinks I'm a beach for living my life. Always working since teen, sometimes dating sometimes not, now happily married. I like to party. When I was younger, you know, the usual person. He tells her I'm a bad influence. The wedding is next year in July. I love this girl like the sister I never had, it just made me miserable. I got into a rebound relationship with a guy I didn't really like, honestly. I had known him for a while, and he was always sweet and kind to me, and I didn't feel anything for him, but I was feeling hopeless about relationships and he really liked me, and I felt bad and thought maybe I could eventually come to love him. I got pregnant, and we married, because of pressure from him and his family. Immediately after we got married the real him came out. He was a classic narcissist. Anytime I didn't agree with him, we got into a huge fight, because I was crushing his ideas. Like he went from liberal, like me, to completely creationist, didn't believe in planets and all science was just people trying to disprove God. That gay people shouldn't adopt children, because they will molest them, because that's the reason they're gay, and that he wanted me to stop working to be SAHM, to each his own. But I like working and this was never my plan, and he used to always say that he admired my dedication to my work. He worked 7 days a week from 6 AM to like 7 or 8, and began drinking heavily. so that every night, when he got home he picked a fight, found a way to blame everything on me, said I was teaching our baby to hate him, and then when he woke the next day wouldn't remember, and wouldn't understand why I was mad at the things he said. Everything I said to him, or anyone said, was taken to the worst possible extreme. He had to constantly show everyone how superior he was, and was constantly bragging. I remember him getting pissed when his best, and only, friend got the same fancy credit card as him. He honestly saw it as disrespectful, and cut off any contact with him. Every time I looked at him, I remembered thinking, God, you're such an idiot, and I hate you so much. Anyway, I knew it was over within a few months, and I had made a huge mistake, but I only left him, after about a year and a half, because I just felt embarrassed for making the mistake of marrying him. We were in the process of buying a $1.4 million home, and I just thought, fuck, I'm going to be tied to him for the rest of my life, if I go through with this. So I packed my stuff the day we were supposed to sign the purchase and sale, and took my daughter, and went to my parents' house. I've remarried since to an absolutely wonderful man, and I'm so happy I made the decision to leave him. My best friend is in a dead-end marriage, and going on her second year with it. She's basically almost suicidally depressed, because she doesn't wanna be married to the loser she's with anymore, but is frightened he's gonna try and take all her money, including her RRSP and some other things, if she tries to leave him. I've known her husband for years. He's manipulative, creepy towards other women even though he's married. It's so bad he's lost a job, because of how inappropriate he is. They met after her mom died of cancer, and she was particularly emotionally vulnerable. She makes probably double, or even triple what he does at her job, and is very financially smart and successful with money. However, she has a hard time dealing with feelings and emotions, and has told me, and my girlfriend who is also friends with her, that she feels trapped, scared and anxious. She no longer loves her husband, and doesn't want to be with him, but she's frightened about what he'll try to do if she says she wants to leave and a divorce. So basically she's now deeply depressed about all this plus some other non-related things. Thankfully they don't have kids but him, and his parents have been particularly intrusive and pushy about the idea, even though she's also told us she isn't even interested right now and certainly doesn't want kids with him. Her in-laws, his parents, sound very rude, nosy and pushy about her, and her money she has. They've basically demanded she use things like her inheritance from her mother's estate to pay for his post-secondary education, buy them a house to live in, and even have a kid. It sounds horrible. I don't know what to do. I don't like having her coming over to hang out and crying in our arms, or seeing her upset about this. I feel bad, and I'm worried about her. She's definitely not the same person, and has even lost a ton of weight over this. Had this lady friend that was a bit of a drama queen, but kept at a distance. She was fine as a friend. One day she introduced me to her new boyfriend. Cool dude, we were into the same things, similar love of games, anime etc, but I didn't see the relationship lasting due to her aforementioned drama loving nature. Much to my surprise they announced their engagement a year or so later. I wanted to grab him and go, no, dude, but you can't. If people are in love, and you try and mess with that, you will just be the asshole in the story they will tell. From what he told me later, it was just drama from day one. Yelling obscenities at him in public settings, showing up at his work to bitch about something inconsequential. 6 months and he sat her down and basically told her, this has been the worst 6 months of my life. Something has to change under pressure from parents, both sides. They agreed to marriage counseling, but that went nowhere, and after another 3 they split. So I made a cool new friend and lost to drama queen 1. This was 20 odd years ago. We are still friends today. He's now married again to an awesome woman who gets along with my wife as well. I started a new job recently and ran into millisecond drama queen. 20 years has not been kind to her, to say the least. She turned into those stereotypical jaded spinsters that hate men and has to bitch about everything. You know the type. They have to speak up in every meeting to find fault with something someone said and point out the issues in a self-important way. Still don't know what he saw in her. Maybe she gave amazing head. I can't remember exactly how long the marriage lasted, no longer than 1.5 years. This was the older brother of a high school friend. He met and started dating a girl that his family and friends didn't really care for. She didn't seem really terrible, but wasn't real bright or social, and you could tell he treated her well, and she took advantage of his kindness. They got married in a pretty short time after starting to date, and his friends were concerned. They had a baby basically exactly 9 months after their wedding. It was his parents' first grandchild, and was even born on his dad's birthday. I don't know if they had a decent relationship or not, but about a year into the marriage she had a friend who broke up with her boyfriend. Apparently the boyfriend knew some dirt, and once they broke up he decided to tell the husband what he knew about his wife. He left him a voicemail saying that she had slept with someone in Vegas during her bachelorette party, which he knew about from his recent ex-girlfriend. He got a paternity test, kid wasn't his. Poor guy was really nice and didn't deserve it. They got divorced immediately. I know he struggled a lot with addiction in the years after. I don't know how he is now, but I heard he had finally been getting better. So here we go. Met in church, dated for a year, no premarital sex, didn't live together beforehand. Married in the church. Everything was perfect. Until the day after the wedding. It started with mental abuse, wanted me to sell my business, quit my job, don't talk to friends or family. Within weeks it was physical abuse. I went to stay with a friend, and she had a local cop who was her ex stalking me, and reported my whereabouts to her nightly. Now she was perfect pre-marriage. Pageant girl growing up all the way to winning for her university. Teacher. Musical talent. Funny. And drop dead 10/10ths beautiful and sexy. Post-marriage it was incredible sex. Oral to finish. And all. Toys. Dress up the whole works. And she could cook her ass off. Perfection. And bipolar as fuck. I met her ex and that's why he left. The final straw was when she got mad and slapped me. I have never been hit by a woman before, and my natural reaction was to return the slap. It was almost instantaneous, without premeditation, did not even leave mark on her. She called the cops. I gathered my belongings that I needed and went to my truck and waited for the cops. This is 3 months after our wedding. One cop talked to me while the other talked to her. They switched spots and talked to us both. They talked to each other and put her in cuffs. I told them I would leave if they could come up with another resolution, so they gave us both Class C misdemeanor tickets and I left. Went back while she was at work the next day and got the rest of my stuff and moved in with a friend. Within 6 months the marriage was dissolved and annulled. Crazy sex is the best sex. Live together before you get married. Meet all of your partner's exes and friends before you commit is my advice. It lasted 1 year and a little bit, but 7 months into the marriage I made a New Year's resolution to finally get out. We were in the airport parking lot after a holiday trip. I don't remember how, but he made money by taking advantage of places with generous return policies. He had a computer he was going to return as part of that scam, but he didn't have time before he left, so he decided to hide the computer under the car seat. I didn't know about it. When we got back to the car a week later, he got pissed off at the car seat because it wouldn't move back, so he hulked out and angrily attacked the car seat to force it back, which crushed the box and scratched the computer that he forgot about. Then he screamed at me for letting him do that, followed by a 3-hour lecture/screaming session on the drive home about how worthless I was. I needed to get my life together. I was too boring to make friends. I couldn't do anything right without his help. Sadly, this was a pretty normal occurrence, but for some reason that time I had had enough and promised myself to find a way out that year. But I should have known when my best friend's mom came up to congratulate me at the wedding and said, "Wasn't it just beautiful to be up there with him? Didn't time just stop and it felt like all that mattered in the world was you two and your love for each other?" I don't know what I said, but my thought was, ooh, no, we don't like each other that much. Married my high school sweetheart when he joined the military so we could stay together. A stupid idea that sounded wonderful at the time. We lived on base together 3 months, during which time he only spoke to me if he needed me to look up how to do something in a game or ask what's for dinner. The housing area was several miles away from the gate to the base. and I didn't have a vehicle, so I was stuck without options to get a job, and he kept his entire paycheck plus some kind of spousal support that I was supposedly entitled to. Never figured that out, but the army contacted me and paid me months after I left him. When we took a week-long trip back to our hometown, he left me at my friend's house with no money or transportation. In the end, I borrowed my mom's old car under the condition no one else could drive it. I had his bank login details, so after calling him to ask if he wanted to get dinner together after not seeing him for 2 days, he told me we didn't have enough to go out anywhere fancy. I checked and he had spent $200 per meal since we got back at Chili's, Red Lobster, Outback, and a couple other places. I was relying on my friend's generosity to eat and go places. He was treating his friends to dinner every night without a second thought. I didn't confront him. The final straw was I finally convinced him to go to lunch with me and my mom, and he asked for his GPS back. We had used it to go to the beach, so it was in my mom's car. And after pressing for information, he revealed he was going to Waco, 3 hours away, to visit his family, and as an afterthought he said, "Oh, did you want to go? It's my family." I realized then that I didn't want to continue feeling like a mother and convenient servant, doing his laundry and cooking/cleaning for him. So I told him to go back alone and mail me my things. What should have been my wake-up call. After 3 weeks on base, I got the flu, and he never brought me food. I had to crawl to the bathroom to get water from the tub faucet because I couldn't stand up. After being sick for a few days, he came into the bedroom and said, "Are you cooking dinner tonight? I'm tired of fast food, burgers." I was able to get myself to the kitchen the next day and hoard the loaf of bread. Oh, also he was sleeping in the living room because he didn't want to get sick. Honestly, I can go on. So some other fun red flag type incidents. During the beach trip, he threw a tantrum because I wouldn't let him drive my mother's only condition of me using her vehicle. Plus he didn't even have a license. I'm talking yelling, pouting, silent treatment, the works. I cooked dinner most every night and served him his food and drink so he could unwind after work. On my birthday he cooked dinner, hot dogs. I would appreciate the gesture, but he served himself, said there's hot dogs if you want some, and left it at that. No happy birthday or anything. My wedding ring was his mom's ring, which was his dad's class ring. I specifically told him I was uncomfortable having it as a ring. Lots of reasons. We used it anyway because it was better. When he washed dishes, like 3 times, he only washed the top of the plates and left the bottom greasy/covered in food, so of course I had to do them again anyway. He bought precisely 3 pieces of furniture, a bed, an entertainment center for the TV/box, and 1 cozy chair for him to play games in. I sat on the floor with my laptop. Whenever he was home, his computer password hint was the most beautiful girl in the world, and the answer was the name of his old classmate. Not that he should have thought of me as the most beautiful girl ever, but it hurt for him to casually tell me his computer password when he needed game directions and see the hint. Yay, caps lock. By no means was I innocent of issues as well, but we shouldn't have married so young, right out of high school and boot camp. He didn't want a partner, he wanted a parent. Was with the girl for 5 years. During that time she went through 6 or 7 jobs. Didn't really bother me, she held her own most of the time. After a deployment and pressure from my family, I decided I should tie the knot. Had a destination wedding in Jamaica, was really nice. About 15 months into it, at Thanksgiving, is when the switch flipped. I had invited a buddy who is a chef over to help me cook Thanksgiving dinner. Guy is like family to me, and I would definitely take a bullet for him. While we are prepping it, she goes off the deep end yelling at me for making him do everything and not doing it traditionally the way we have the prior years. I was assisting every step of the way. I told her this and told her to go back and watch TV. To think she replied by throwing a punch and hitting me in the forehead, which I laughed. Being a soldier, I couldn't believe she would throw a punch. My friend was in shock and we continued. I told him not to worry about it. While that was the start, it became a quickly toxic relationship where she started cutting friends out because she didn't like them or they didn't pay attention to her. Her own best friend started dating my best friend and she cut her off because she hated my best friend, and she ignored her during the Halloween party where they met up. while the toxicity started getting worse to the point I installed a security camera system because I was afraid she would try something. I offered her an ultimatum saying her behavior and physical attacks are unacceptable, and I would give her 3 months to try and improve, and to see a therapist. Well, come November after my party we had a really nice day out, and took her out to a really swanky dinner and movie. Got home late, and I wanted to play some Rainbow Six Siege. So I went to my office, came up to grab a glass of water, and was pushed down the stairs and the door slammed shut behind me. I came up to confront her, and she smacked me 5 or 6 times, and kicked me between the legs 3 times. It was then I signed the papers, and went to the court, and dropped them off. But because I was nice I allowed her to live in my house for a year. After it was finalized under the rule she wouldn't bring any dates or boyfriends to the house and I would do the same. Upon breach of this, she would be evicted. She agreed, so eventually she brought a boy over and on camera was making with him. I confronted her, told her she can move out for breach of contract since she was not paying any bills at this point. She left for work the next day and I changed all the locks on the house. She called the police and tried to say I hit her. The police took my side and walked me to my backyard, gave me advice, told me to go through proper channels and give her 30 days. I agreed and that's how I finally got mostly free. Still finalizing a co-signed car which hopefully will be fixed tomorrow, but man, I can see how toxic she really is now. This isn't all of it, but I figure this was the point that the flip hit, that I needed to change things. We were married for a year and some odd change. She also interfered with a date I had at PAX East after the divorce was finalized by showing up with her girlfriend because her then friend saw me and this other girl at a bar during a Pokemon pub crawl. Lol. Sorry for any typist, did this from a phone. I knew my marriage was over on the honeymoon, but it took me 6 years to end it because I was abused, gaslit, and had no money to leave. Spouse controlled all finances in a joint account. Backstory: we were both 19 years old and married to escape our religious homeschooling households. Just living together was not socially acceptable. My ex's family was disgusting, abusive, obese, and awful. They abused my ex and doted on their 16-year-old daughter, whom they tried to marry to another 16-year-old kid at a backwoods church in WV. We ratted them out and decided to escape because it escalated my ex's abuse, so we got married and rented an apartment. I did love my ex and saw them as a person with potential who needed help to heal from their past. We had made a plan to take turns supporting each other the university, and I had already secured my first degree and had a career in my field. I began uni at 15 through a gifted program. During our relationship I never noticed any real red flags or odd behaviors, but a few days after marriage that all changed. My ex and I had a couple arguments prior to marriage, but they were civil and over quickly. On our honeymoon, day 3, I was reading the map in the car, and ex was driving. There was a street that changed names after an intersection, so I mentioned that it was the same street, and my ex started accusing me of lying and trying to get us lost. It escalated to them literally screaming at me, swearing and insulting, while I tried to explain until I was crying. We pulled over, and I had to prove it on the map, then got screamed at for being a shitty navigator. I knew that insane behavior was only the beginning. It was like ripping down a curtain. Over the next 6 years I would have my employment restricted, not be allowed access to money or a driving license, be denied my turn to return to university, go through the overwhelming ordeal of having my spouse change gender and shame me for not being lesbian, and be emotionally mentally abused by an actual confirmed sociopath. They were just as mentally ill as their relatives, and had been hiding it in a way that only a sociopath can. I'm now in a relationship with 2 extremely loving and wonderful men, poly, and am slowly improving my life despite the pandemic. TLDR, if someone's family is shitty and / or abusive, run. I promise you they are secretly just like them. Bought into the "if we get married, things will be different" crap. Don't buy into that about anything. People think marriage is special, that it can help you grow as a person, get your life in order, then you'll have kids which makes you more responsible, and ultimately that the whole process will make you more virtuous and live a fuller life. Bullshit. Marriage doesn't do that. Good relationships do that. People expect a lot of change and development/growth from marriage in particular, and I was one of those people. It doesn't cause any of that, even when people claim it did. They were just good people predisposed to adjust well to various situations where their own priorities are no longer #1. Most people actually aren't like that, but suffer through marriage anyway. Just imagine your current relationship continuing forever with no marriage. You have kids, you support each other, you grow together. Everything about this person seems like all of that is possible. Then approach it like, does each of us want to save money on taxes above and beyond all that? If so, great. Get married for the tax benefits. Don't give the institution of marriage any more importance than that. Even asking why people broke up after less than a year of marriage is giving marriage some kind of special weight. Don't. It's a tax arrangement. If you look up the definition of marriage, it's hilariously vague and circular between marriage, wedding, and nuptials. My situation is a bit different, but I'll share my piece, because I definitely think it qualifies. I'm 24 now, but at the time of everything I'm about to mention, I was 22. My ex and I were legally common law and engaged, but the engagement really only lasted a handful of months. I knew it was a bad idea as soon as she mentioned the fact that she was suffering from the grass is greener mentality. Instead of boohooing over it, I told her that I'm going to show her why she's here with me and why our grass is greener than any other person's grass. The only problem, however, was that she was a bit of a fairytale kind of girl, to which I would say great, awesome. But she was so deep into it that it turned her into a control freak, and if things didn't meet her expectations, she was let down or slightly bitter that it didn't turn out as she imagined it. Everything had to be pitch perfect for her, and she expected me to know what she wanted instead of communicating it civilly. Keyword, civilly. She communicated her feelings, but it was very coarse and anxiety inducing, because it always felt like the end, like she wasn't all in on the relationship in play, and was secretly opting to find another guy. Suffice to say, I never felt secure or at home with her, and she was wearing my ring. I simply did not know what to do after a while, because I was giving her 100% of myself as much as I could, while also giving her space to give me 100% of her, and it seemed to be working. We went places, hung out, listened to music, sang. It was great. I got to know her better in a month than I had in 2 years, and vice versa, but it wasn't enough. For some reason she needed more than that. It was never good enough. It wound down to a huge fight, and we agreed to just not wear our rings anymore and call off the engagement and all plans for our eventual wedding. That was last year, in 2019, and we broke up this year, 2020, in April. We'd been together for almost 4 years, but I must admit that it was a very dreadful 4 years in which everything had to go her way. Little of what I did was supported by her, and I'd been giving up everything so that she and her passion could remain afloat, because it was too expensive for her to shoulder alone. I pretty much died for 4 years, and I could tell that engagement was a bad idea soon after I pulled the question. I did not love her, and I still don't. I love her as a person and wish her well, but that's it. It never felt completely right to me from the beginning of our 5-year relationship. I would tell him of these feelings too, but he had convinced me that this was a me problem. He was on a mission to strip me of any sense of self-identity I had, and he was well on his way to completing that. On our honeymoon he came out with a big secret/lie that rocked my world. The veil had been lifted, and I could now see that he was not this godlike person he claimed to be. He was not perfect. I didn't have the flaw this time, and there is no way it could have been my fault. But I was now married. 6 months of therapy revealed a lot for me. Initially I started going to therapy in hopes that a therapist could help me get over this lie and move on with the marriage. Instead, therapy helped me see all the years and layers of manipulation and control that was going on. Ultimately I came to know that the reason it never felt right was because it was very wrong. I left him after 6 months of marriage. Never for a second did I regret that. The longer I'm away from his mental abuse, the clearer I see it. On my wedding day, as my dad had my arm and walked me down the aisle in front of 400 of our closest family and friends, I asked God to make something happen make me pass out before I got to the altar so I didn't have to go through with it. I was so brainwashed that he had convinced me that these feelings were because of all my issues and had no merit. Edit to add, had he never come out with this giant lie, I would probably still be married to him, believing that everything is my fault, and probably lost all sense of self I had left. That's a scary thought. Got married right out of high school. We had a short, but really good relationship before getting married. I had one small warning from a friend about her, but he did not go into details. He just said she was crazy. We moved from Texas to New Orleans for her school. It was great. Then Hurricane Katrina hit. We moved back, and things were still going okay. All of a sudden she kept saying she wanted alone time. Finally she asked if I could get her a hotel room for a night. This concerned me, but I trusted her and went ahead. Well, she cheated at the hotel. I had a personal no tolerance rule, so I was talking about divorce. She cried so hard. So I stayed, but everything went downhill from there. She started smoking weed every day and drinking a little. Honestly, she turned into a weird sort of controlling, manipulative monster. I stuck with it. I told her let's start over. I forced myself to trust her. Did everything to make it work and to remain happy. Eventually, after a few months, her personality changed along with her friends. She acted pretty crazy. Would be all about me one day and the next be completely distanced and angry. She left. Said she wanted a divorce. What? I was dumbfounded. But we had already discussed this. In between when she left and the actual divorce, she came back and completely trashed my place. Threw things around. Slashed my mattress. Despite that, I would come keep her company when she had bad days, lend her money and other favors. She eventually told everyone, most of my friends and her family, that I had cheated on her. I didn't want to shame her, so I didn't go out of my way to make a public opposition to that or anything, so most old friends never talked to me again. Every time we talked about the things she did that hurt me, like taking my place, lying to me friends, and me finding such paraphernalia, she would laugh. It all put me in a really bad mental place. I'm ashamed to say there was one night a police picked us both up. I was contemplating jumping out in front of a truck on the highway, and she was stopping me. Just told him we were having an argument and we were instructed to sleep separate places that night, but we ended up not spending another night together again. My parents picked me up that night and I cried most of the night with them holding me. It was such a time of getting emotional whiplash. I couldn't possibly go into all the details, but I should have heeded my friend's warning before we married. I still look on her old self fondly and wish that could have continued. It was fantastic, but she definitely went off the deep end. I think everyone should know when our relationship first started, I basically took her away from a physically abusive father and moved her in with me. I don't know if that's where her issues came from, but it did make me consider that sort of thing in future relationships. Oh, I don't know a single person who is in a successful or happy relationship. Plenty of people who stick together, sure, but they are all unhappy with the other person. Every single married couple I know that sticks together does it for one or multiple reasons. For the kids. Because, apparently, showing the kids a failed relationship is totally healthy for their future sense of what makes a relationship good or bad. I can't afford rent or a mortgage on my own. So they are basically roommates that aren't, technically, able to sleep with other people. Oh, and most of them still sleep together. Not that there's sex involved, but separate beds make the failed marriage too real, I guess. We'd have to sell the house at a loss. Yeah, okay. That has nothing to do with the fact you're both too lazy and insecure about your looks and the dating market. Huh. We both have an expensive car. We'd have to get rid of those. Let me guess. You're stuck with a lease contract for another few years and you refuse to be seen in a recent but used car. Sure, renew the lease when you can. You need it for work and you don't have any savings to buy an old beater. Well, he cheated on me a few times. But we are considering maybe going to couples counseling one day. It might still work out. Okay. Well, yeah. She hits me sometimes, but I kinda deserve it, you know? You just don't know how they are in private. She really loves me. Find help. I can't live without sex. Do you mean those 2 times a year? Not even on your birthdays or anniversary, just when you happen to be drunk? I can't be alone. Even though you're both actively avoiding one another in the apartment you live in. You play games, she watches YouTube. You both have Tinder installed, and the other one pretends they haven't seen your profile yet, and swiped you left, hoping you'll meet someone, and cut the cord. Until death do us part. As you look at your watch, as if you could see the time ticking down there. I've seen it all. And I've not yet seen a single marriage that worked out. It's all toxicity, fighting, arguing, drama, whining, complaining, taking a break number 14 this year, cheating, emotionally and or physically, etc.